And welcome back to the Nutrimedical Report. And we have joining us J.D. Moore from Red Pill Reports, and he has a show over at Truth Frequency Radio. How do they listen to your show, J.D.?
Easy way to do it is to go to truthfrequencyradio.com, and you can get into the live link while we're on the air. You can also go to redpillreports.com, and after the show, all of the archives will be available immediately after the show there. So that's probably the best way. There are a bunch of apps and things like that for your smartphones and stuff like that, and you can also dial in and listen. So there's a lot of ways to check out the program over there.
I think also people here in Genesis will be familiar with your voice because you were a co-host with Joyce Riley for a period of time, I think a year or so.
A little less than a year, but yeah, I was worked with Joyce. She kind of got me going in this industry, and I have a lot of thanks in my heart for her.
Well, that's good. Now, one of the important things is, and this is the prime modus of the show. Now, people are very well aware, and if you go to the blogs on Genesis Network, they're aware that some people say, for God's sake, Deagle, shut up and let your guests talk, which, of course, I have that defect, okay, and I'm repenting constantly of it. Sometimes you'll see guests like, Joel Skousen, or if I have Gerald Salente on it, you'll see me relatively unusually silent because I want to learn as well as ask questions. Right. Other times, if my guests are basically, going off on a rabbit trail, or there's saying something that's going to be dangerous for public people to listen to, I'll have to intervene and do something. But most of the time, I'm trying to learn to be, number one, better communicative, not get too technical, and as I say, not deviate too far into the 90% of which I know, which is far beyond the average knowledge of the average mortal citizen of Earth.
Fair enough.
A lot of people really don't understand just how far my knowledge goes, so they're afraid to call in. I tell people, don't be afraid. I'm not going to beat you up. There's no such thing as a stupid question. So even when we're on air now, if you have a good question or you're just a query about anything on Earth, wellness, dentistry, geopolitics, finances, astrophysics, geotectonics of the Earth, geoengineering, you name the topic, I have researched almost anything you can imagine, and I have answers and questions. And the most important thing is not that you have all the answers, but you have the best questions.
That's the right answer.
Yeah, the best questions will actually lead you in. I tell people, don't believe anything I say, ever. In fact, it says that even in the Bible, be studied to be approved. What I tell people is, number one, you have two witnesses. You have the witness of your intellect, which we hope to sharpen by training you how to use your brain rather than just holding your hat so it doesn't fall over your eyes.
Yes.
But also how to pray so you can actually get an answer, and how to actually, what I call, walk. And, as I say, one of the things that I do with people, too, and I give them a Christian witness, is I show them the witness of my gift of medical knowledge or wellness knowledge. But I'll tell them how to pray about specific things. And one of the things I've done over the years is I'll give people over time, it says in the book of Revelation, and there's a name written on a white stone that is your name that God knows. And I can actually discern and tell you what that name is in Hebrew letters.
Wow, that's cool.
And it's very important that people start to understand that, because a walk with God is where we start walking supernaturally. And I tell people that heaven starts today and hell becomes evident when the body drops away. So you don't go to heaven, you're in a heavenly relationship because you are a supernatural being. We are collectively, the human race is the consort or the wife of the Most High God, the creator of the universe. We have power, we have a scepter. We are not immortal beings. We're literally in the womb of earth becoming immortal ones. And the ones that make the transition that don't die physically and spiritually, they become immortal ones. They're no longer mortal beings that can physically die. They live in all three realms, the realm of the negentropic realm, which is the spiritual realm, the entropic realm, which is the lower five dimensions, including the Higgs field or the gravitonic wave field, we call it a curved time-space, and the supernatural realm of the eternal, where the residing Most High God is, which basically makes you an eternal one. So, you're not going to heaven, you are. And I tell people we need to start kind of taking over the world. It needs to be literally created in our image, which is by the will of the Most High. And we have to understand there's no such thing as, any other sub-truth. In other words, whether it's subatomic particle physics or spirituality. And how can I say it? At this level, I will give a level of understanding on any topic, including spiritual, geotectonic, or, medicine or whatever, and a framework for at least asking better questions. So
I love it.
The most important thing is you have to understand out there that I have been sent back from the other side at 8.5, specifically with a mission, and I'm accomplishing that mission right now. And now it's time to start unveiling exactly what, number one, what my skill sets and calling is to try to help call them out. Because the people that are listening to this program right now, one of the words that I have to give to people listening is that many are called, few are chosen, but the choosing is not God's, it's us. We choose to bring back America to a constitutional republic. We choose to become pro se litigant experts. We choose to take care of our health care, not our magnificent deities or doctors that try to dictate to us and do toxic things to us or unnecessary surgeries. We choose to understand that the unborn in our fetus, in our womb, is an individual that's genetically distinct, and we don't have the right to terminate it. We choose to honor the elderly and extend lifespan so they don't live 20 years in dementia or drooling or deteriorating, and then put them through hospice care or Obamacare, which basically withdraws essential surgery at 12 o'clock on Saturday night, when 2 o'clock on Tuesday afternoon they're going to have the ethics committee meet. And by that time, you have assumed room temperature because you now have formalin where your blood existed in your bloodstream, and you're now being prepared to have makeup put on so you look really good in your coffin.
That's right.
And I try to use what I call objective and painful humor to get through to people that you have not walked where I've walked, and you have not seen what I see. And if I shared 90% of what I do know, unless you had a strong relationship with the Most High God, your heart would stop immediately. So you need to know that I will be gentle with you to an extent, but I have defects, and I'm trying to do the best I can with those defects, which are pretty obvious to anybody. As I say, I'm a warthog for God, and there's lots of warts. So, with that said, fire away. Any question you want to ask on any topic in the universe, I'm here to answer it.
Well, let's start first up and back up with what you were talking about just a minute ago, and this idea of asking the right questions. That's something I talk about all the time on the radio show, and I think that's kind of a root cause of why we're in the mess that we're in right now, is that we've all been Delphi controlled into these polarizing issues. And, this issue, the thing that's really on the forefront of my mind, obviously, right now is the unrest that's going on in Baltimore. And I'll tell you, what really bothers me is the lack of quality questions, both coming out of the independent media, the mainstream media, and the people who are paying attention to this at home. Nobody's asking about what the causality of violence is. They're saying
I can tell you exactly what it is. The first thing is the very best way to describe evil is, and this is to decide what good is. And people don't understand this. I remember when I was a little boy and the nuns were trying to teach us in grade primary and 1, and they would tell us stories about, they were in Garden of Eden, and they took a piece of fruit, and they ate the wrong piece of fruit, and God said, get out of here, you're not my children anymore, which is a lie.
Okay.
What it really was, and this is allegorical, and it's really much more profound, because the nature of all evil is really simple. To hear and do the will of the Most High is good, and anything other than that is evil. Which means if you don't have a relationship, you don't have God on speed dial, either with your intellect or your soul, you are not capable of doing good. Period. It doesn't matter how nice you look, including the current Pope, or whether or not you're a humanitarian with billions of dollars giving it to specific causes. Those causes might be pro-abortion or might result in a genocide of population or destroying the environment, even if you think as a primary person it's doing the right thing. So that's number one. And the problem I see is the churches are the biggest obstruction, because they don't have people that speak truth because they're afraid of their 501c3 status, or they really don't understand the issues. They introduce people to the nature of Yeshua Jesus, but they don't take his own words. And I like the statement by one of our pastors at North Coast Church, where I go to attend to periodically, or I attend on their virtual screen, because North Coast Church, by the way, you can listen and watch their videos anywhere in the world, and their audios anywhere on the planet, because their church is like almost 20,000 people. It's a mega church, but they're not a crazy mega church. But they say that they're the welcome committee, so they don't talk about prophecy because the pastor said, we don't understand it, so we're not going to talk about it. That's a good idea. If you don't understand it, don't talk about it. Good idea. In other words, if you're not a neurosurgeon, don't operate on someone's brain. Don't operate on someone's areas if you don't know what you're talking about. Good idea. Right. But he said, one of my favorite sayings he has is, one of the pastors, is that the red letter words of Jesus in the New Testament are God for dummies. One of my favorite sayings.
Crib notes,
God
almost.
There you go. And welcome back. And you raise great questions. As I say, better questions lead to better answers. And sometimes they kind of get scary, like the hair in the back of your neck pops up and you say, uh-oh, not again. You raised the issue of what happened over the weekend, where there were two people shot at this art show that was, quote, anti-Muslim. What's the story there?
Well, I mean, the details are still a little sketchy at the on the face of it, but according to the official story, they were essentially set up to have this pro freedom of speech event that was, basically set up like a Muslim cartoon art exhibit, and so they were having this particular event. A couple of gentlemen showed up in a car and ostensibly just got out of their car and started shooting at some of the officers that were on the scene. So now the details are coming out that this particular gentleman, one of the shooters, this guy was a Kenyan national. He's been in the country for a while. His name's Elton Simpson. He's been around, again, in the country down in Texas for a good long time. And the FBI, well aware of who he was, had actually infiltrated his mosque and also instructed an FBI informant to start keeping tabs on this guy. So again, we're starting to see the elements of a nurtured event taking place here. And the question that I had when I first saw this event was basically the logistical timeline of the event. You've already got the SWAT team there on premises when these two gentlemen show up, allegedly both strapped with AR-15 type assault weapons, and start shooting at police officers. So my question is, why was the SWAT team already there? Of course, we know now that the FBI
let me stop you
was
for
already,
1 second.
Okay.
I want you to continue, but how long this is a trivia question. How long does it take for a SWAT team to put on full gear?
Oh, I would say at least 20 minutes to get on site, ready to rock and roll, right?
On the average is around 30 minutes.
Oh, okay, 30 minutes. I was being generous.
And that doesn't include transport time. So if they're there, this actually happened. I call it the Columbinitis. In other words, when Columbine High School had disaster happened, the SWAT team were there quicker than if they were transported by Scotty at the transporter beam, from the Star Trek.
Right.
Okay, so you have to understand, the first kid shot in Columbine, remember both of these kids, Klebold and Harrison, I took care of the first young man shot in Columbine. We got to see private video and get private information. Then I was going to write a book, and his mom wanted to actually make it into a Hollywood movie. And of course, Hollywood wanted to change the whole script and rewrite it, because I was actually writing a book on Columbine, because I know lots and lots of stuff. Some that I periodically talk about. But Columbine had the SWAT team on there. Mark was shot outside the... he was only there 3 weeks because he had a learning disorder, and he was actually being trained at that school for a few weeks, and he was shot outside the cafeteria. But the same thing's going on. Again, the same modus, FBI informants, SWAT team there before, quicker than spit, as they say.
Yep.
I mean, and the Sanarov brothers with the marathon bombing up at the... In Boston. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I've now got a new term now, and I want people to embed this into what I call the psyche. Besides scamtastic, this one is a new term called Sanarovitis, where you take the Sanarov brothers, you monitor them, even the Russian security agencies, when they travel to the Chechen Republic. These people were known as, at least the older brother was known as a terrorist. The younger guy just sort of went along.
Right.
But the entire thing smells to high heaven, including even pictures that shows that, you're not walking around with giant pressure cookers in the back of backpacks with the ink markers, and then all of a sudden these things, when you have hundreds of security officers around and doing a war game simulation, which, by the way, which is 9/11 and Oklahoma City, these are entire war game simulations, which is why when I had Sherry and Chris Gio on, and I think Sherry was making the thing, well, it doesn't really matter if it was, this or that. Yes, it does, actually. And Dr. Deagle knows so much about 9/11 and about how it was a full operation by the CIA and by our operatives, which are Saudi and Israeli, and the actors, which are actually in these jets. Whether they went into the building or not by remote control or flew them in, they probably had, beacons inside the tower so they could, quote, thread the needle, because you can learn how to fly but they were flying at super high speeds. They were not regular speeds. They had the engines revved up to maximum. Mm-hmm. And we know that these buildings wouldn't burn, because jet fuel, when it's sitting on steel, burns at 1,600 degrees. It's not enough to even burn the asbestos off, let alone turn the columns into a vapor cloud or hit anything that's paramagnetic, like people, water, and anything other than paper and wood, which are non-paramagnetic. Concrete, which is paramagnetic because it has water content. It's actually a paracrystalline liquid. Most people don't realize concrete's not a solid. It's a paracrystalline liquid that flows over centuries, but is not chemically a solid, believe it or not.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. Most people don't know, because they don't know about inorganic or organic chemistry, quantum physics, or any of these things, and I'm trying to instruct them to make them understand that paramagnetics, it gives you telltale signs. I had actually 40 anomalies. I proved they used micronukes and thermate, and then I actually got in contact with nuclear physicists and a munitions expert from Finland, who actually sent me documents when he was recruited to actually demolish the World Trade Center towers in 98 by Silverstein and the Port Authority in New York. Those documents are still posted up on Clay and Iron. The PDF documents are about 35 pages. So when people want to dispute with me, this isn't open to dispute. I mean, there are times when you can have a right to have an opinion, but most of the time, opinion in legal terms means to opine, which means you have logic, evidence that could be entered to a court of law, logic, both inductive and deductive, and it's basically watertight. But I have enough information; it's not even open to dispute anymore. It's a closed and shut case. They used nukes. They just 1/3 of the mass of the buildings was vaporized into an atomic vapor. They used RDX cord to cut out the outside joist, not superthermate, and that's why when I dismantled the so-called case by superthermate by Professor Jones years ago, I made a lot of, quote, enemies within the so-called truth movement because they didn't like Dr. Deagle correcting people that they consider their experts. Mm-hmm. Sorry, too bad, you're having a bad day, but you have to prove it to me. And really, my attitude is, I don't care if you're a grade 3 mother, a grandmother, and you've got a good point, you can teach me because I'm getting taught. My sons teach me stuff. My wife teaches me stuff because I'm a social idiot. And there's things I don't know. But guess what? I'm like a giant sponge. I'm like one of those, if I spend enough time with you, I will literally suck your mind drive, everything you know. And as my father used to say, if I know what you know and I know, I'll know more than you.
That's a good point.
And what I do now, and that's what the people, when they're listening to the program, is to start learning, I teach them how to use their brain better, how to use their spirituality better, so they can not be part of this matrix. Because matrix is coming. And you sent me that article last week, which I thought was pretty shocking, that the social score online for China is going to determine whether you can be employable. I thought,
unbelievable, isn't it?
Yeah, tell us about that, because, I mean, that's so bizarre. It's like, hey, guess what? The Chinese are a test lab now to say, if you're not in the matrix, we're not going to allow you to be in the real world.
I mean, they are really working to use technology to regulate behavior over there in a way that I've never seen before. And it essentially is very much like our credit score here in our country. But our credit score is based on your spending habits and your amount of money that you've got coming in. They're working on this social, I don't know what you would want to call it. It's a social score. That's really the best
I can tell you what it is.
Okay.
I can tell you what it is. It's called your Sim score. Remember Sim City?
Oh, right. That's exactly what it is. That didn't even occur to me, Dr. D, but that's exactly what it is.
Let me give you a little background here, and then this is going to twist people up, especially those who are of faith or very little faith or no faith at all. In 1993, October 10th, I was laying face down in my room and wide awake, praying, and I asked God. I had already received in 1988 the book Clay and Iron and Abortion to Armageddon, supernaturally dictated to me. And I had it in my laptop up in my bedroom. I was working on it at night while I was in practice. And I had a supernatural visitation that he was going to bring me to the city from which the mark of the beast would come. By July 10th, I was just shortening the story, the next year, I had Q-level security clearance at CCOM, was working with patients and employees working at U.S. Space Command, Strategic Defense, and Star Wars, and the Virtual World Project, otherwise known as the Matrix at Schriever Air Force Base. And I've been inside the array. So, we needed to, I don't want people just to be in a state of shock listening to this out there quietly saying, no, I don't want to call him, man. Deagle's really bad today. I mean, he'll just chew me up. No. I want you to realize there's no such thing. My wife kind of said, Bill, she's what I call a genius of communication. I'm like a slightly above your pet rock. And she says, why don't you just tell them there's no such thing as a stupid question? And I say, and I only bark and bite like a sheepdog for God when someone is going to harm my sheep so they don't fall in the hole, go over the cliff, or get eaten by wolves. Okay? Beyond that, I'm here to teach. I'm not here to beat people up. And so, we were talking about the Garland shooting. This is another one of those things that I call Centerovitis. And the Centerov brothers were full monitored by the Russian security forces for years. The FBI were monitoring these guys. I mean, they knew on one main basis. They actually interviewed them. If they wanted to, they could have planted something on them to actually have their GPS coordinates down to a meter at any time, including when they're walking around with backpacks, which, by the way, didn't have the right markings. And now the younger Zenarov, I think they just recently had to court. Did they have the trial and give him a sentence yet?
I don't think he's been sentenced, but he was in court today. All I really gathered was that there was some emotional testimony given by his mother today, so I don't think we're quite at the actual sentencing phase yet.
Now, you know that there's remember Oklahoma City, Timothy McVeigh. The circumstances, by the way, of his death and his so-called lethal injection are very questionable. As a doctor remember, I'm a forensic investigator, too, of trauma, injuries, medical legal. So I would be a forensic investigator if I went to court in pretty well every specialty. I was certified by the American Board of Independent Medical Examiners and the Stony Brook Medical Legal Center in New York City. So I got lots of training.
Right.
And court time. And I can tell you, his death sounds pretty anomalous. He's still breathing and still has movement. He's not been lethally injected. Okay? Secondly, his cohort, who's down Supermax facility in Colorado, has already made enough hints to indicate. And, of course, we've had Jesse Trentadue, whose brother was beaten to death, electrocuted, and tortured to death. And I have put numerous shows on Jesse Trentadue's brother. I'll probably bring Jesse back on. But I was the exit examiner for all 5 special op forensic team. Now, people say, how could Deagle be in all these places? He's like the Flash. No, God had my day timer. And believe me, I'm not special enough to be able to arrange the universe to make sure that I'm in all these places over time. It's because God had my day timer. He say, Deagle, be here on this date and this time at this lamppost, and boom, it'll happen, you know? So it happened. My boss, Major Schwinder, was off in Texas doing airtime, and I did all 5 exit exams. So when we see the Garland shooting, now we have the birth of, as you mentioned at the beginning of the show, the Dragon Child. Tell us about what your inputs and what are people saying to you when they say Dragon Child? What do you mean by Dragon Child? What are you saying?
Well, I'm talking obviously about the birth of the brand new sovereign. We're been blessed with another sovereign on the planet here, ladies and gentlemen. William and Kate, obviously over in the UK, giving birth to their second daughter. The new name is out now, Charlotte Elizabeth Diana, which I think is awful. That's a horrible, horrible name, and why drag Diana's name back through the mud. But, well, you know, my mentality on this whole thing is that this is a bloodline that we're watching continue in perpetuation here. And, you know, a lot of people believe that they might be reptilian-type people, and I'm kind of, you know, I'm 50-50 on the fence with these people potentially. Okay,
first off, reptiles. A lot of people think they have physically reptilian DNA, and I have to revise them. You have both physical DNA and spirit DNA. And the way you got to think of it is this, is what is a human being? And a human being is tripartite. We have 3 portions to us. We have a spirit, which is literally a spark that allows us to exist. It literally comes from the creator God of the universe. You couldn't exist without the spark of God in you. The second is you have a soul, which is equivalent to the mind, and that exists in what's called a negentropic field. The Greek philosophers understood the negentropic field because they're talking about the field of the mind, archetypes, etc. And that field exists in 7 dimensions, okay? And then there are 5 dimensions, not 4, to our physical world, which is the entropic, which you call entropic decay, destruction. The otherwise Bible term for it is called the lake of fire. So we live in the lake of fire. The only reason why we don't get fried is because we have the magnetosphere of Earth, because Earth is a nuclear reactor. It has 440 times more thorium than any other planet in our near part of our arm of our galaxy. So it's a very strong nuclear reactor with a strong Bosch field to actually block the solar wind and the cosmic rays which come from the sun, because not only do they come from deep space, from cosmic background radiation, but also from our sun. And we're currently having a shift in frequencies. So the sun is putting out 73% higher amounts of UVB or higher energy. A will tan you, B will burn you, C will cause cancer, and D will cause death. And there's 73% more of those radiation in the last 23 years than any time in previous human history. There's a 5% decay in the magnetosphere of the Earth, so the amount of radiation getting through to the ground is increasing. And, of course, we're now suffering what's called gravity waves from deep space that they're identifying using SPT, the Pi Meson scope, and the South Pole telescope, and Chandra X-ray telescope, and IRAS, looking at deep space for what they've been looking for over a century. And because they saw perturbations of the Uranus and the other planets, indicating there was a deep space hypergravitonic object using Newtonian physics. And those deep space gravitonic waves shut down the CERN and also caused the earthquake in Nepal because it released the tectonic forces that are stored up in the rocks in Nepal. Earthquakes and volcanoes around the world are increasing and release of methane hydrates caused by, under the batholiths of oil and gas, which are made by gold theory, from the deep nuclear reactions in the Earth, they actually create larger and larger molecular objects. Okay, somebody just gave me a message here.
Okay.
I guess we've got a caller trying to get through, so I guess our board op, Aaron, should check to see if our message thing is working. So Aaron's trying to get through. We've got a caller, Mark, up in Oregon, and Mark is a good caller. He usually asks big questions, so we'll see. The number is 800-259-5791, so we'll see if that can happen. So when the dragon child was born, and this is a theory. Have you heard of the Merovingians or Merovi?
Mm-hmm.
Well, basically in the 6th century, which was around the time of King Arthur of England, when they were kind of unifying all the different kingdoms at that time, they came out and said that there was a bloodline, which is the Knights Templar, and one of their secret quote sayings was that Jesus had married Mary Magdalene, who was actually the chief female apostle. In fact, she was actually considered a higher intellect than almost all the other apostles, and they actually purposely and physically removed the books and writings that were written after she died about her knowledge and understanding. I call the female side of the disciples. And they made this story up that Jesus had children, and those children became the blood descendants. They became the kings of Europe and the czars of Russia. They're all claimed to be blood descendants of Jesus and Mary Magdalene. Did you know that?
I've heard that story, yes, sir.
Yeah, and of course that's where you get the
Da Vinci Code and the Da Vinci Code and all that stuff, and all of that, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and by the way, it wouldn't make any difference whether you had children or not, to be honest with you. It's really irrelevant. But the point is that these people make it up because they want to have a blood descendant, just like the ancient high priesthood in Atlantis. And when you look at the explosion of Thera that destroyed Santorini, they call it the Minoans. It actually wasn't Minoa at all, because King Minos was just happened to be the king at the time. It was actually the last remnants of the Atlantean Empire, which is inside what's called, according to the ancient Greek philosophers, Aristotle, I believe, was the one who wrote about Atlantis, that it was at the Pillars of Malta. So there are actually 3 falls of Atlantis. The last one was the time of the second kingdom of the Egyptians, when Thera blew up, and the Hebrews, or the tribes of the Hebrews, were actually released by Moses and brought to the land of Canaan after their long time and 400 years in Egypt. What's going on right now, of course, is that these bloodlines are still there. The Rothschilds, by the way, Harry's wife is actually a Rothschild. People should know that she's Rothschild blood. So they managed to link up the Rothschild family with the royal families of Europe. There's lots of royal people that have royal, quote, blood. So the physical blood doesn't mean you're a reptile, but it's what your spirit DNA is. For example, we look at people like Hillary Clinton, I call her.
Right.
She's a Ruddam, and they're wizards and warlocks. And her family have been doing for many centuries human sacrifice, sex magic rituals, and they are true wizards and witches. She's the highest level dame in masonry in the Western world. So you wonder why she gets a pass from... That's why she gets a pass from Pataki from the State Department with her red blouse on and her artificially enlarged...
Do you have difficulty...
I really appreciate you coming on the program today and asking really good questions. It's dynamic to have someone that's bright and interested and curious. As I say, curiosity didn't kill the cat. Curiosity made the cat live forever.
That's right. That's right. Well, I appreciate you having me on, man. This is always a lot of fun getting to hang out with you.
Yeah. Well, you had a question about CERN.
I've got a development at CERN, and I got to apologize, first of all, that it's taken me this long to mention this, because this is completely squarely right up your alley. And if anybody can tell us what the heck is going on at CERN right now, I think it's you. Okay, did you read the story that broke on Friday, Dr. D, about the unidentified lying, with an L, not flying, unidentified lying object that's been discovered at CERN, sir?
Lying, and what kind of lies was it saying?
That's what I thought, too. I thought, okay, they found a politician somewhere wedged in CERN, but that's not exactly what happened. So on Friday, one of the head physicists, his name is Albert de Roque. He is a staff member at CERN, one of the high-up guys. He was talking about the continued experiments that are going on at CERN, and one of the things that he mentioned in this article was that they, as a group, collectively, the scientists there, are now cautiously aware of this thing that they are calling an unidentified lying object. There is an object that they do not know what it is, they don't know where it came from, and it mysteriously appeared last week in one of the vacuum chambers in the 17-mile ring of CERN. What's beyond that is not only do they not know what it is or why it's there, they are choosing to remain, and this is a quote, cautiously optimistic. They say that it's not something that they're concerned about as a problem to the operation, but it's just something to keep an eye on, Dr. D. They want to make sure They think everything is going to be okay, Dr. D, as long as it doesn't move and as long as it remains stable, which to me, what they're telling us...
Well, they're describing what kind of an object it is. Is it
they're not.
To be a living thing, or does it appear to be kind of a strange aspect?
Dr. D, it is something that manifested itself in a vacuum tube at CERN, and their only hope right now is that it doesn't get angry. That's really what they're saying in this article. And I don't know what it is. Is this the thing that they have been trying to manifest there this whole time, and that's why they're not concerned about it? I would think...
Well, let me ask you a series of questions.
Okay.
The best way I find I can teach people how to use their brain better is to ask some questions.
Okay.
Were you aware of the Hindu statue, which is over CERN? And what is the statue of?
It's Shiva, the goddess of destruction, if I'm not mistaken.
Right, Shiva or Kali, Kali of destruction, right? And why do you think that is?
I'm not, I personally believe for a long time there was a lot of conspiracy, these people, saying, these people are going to try and open up interdimensional portals. But in the last couple of months, they've come out and they've said, well, we're going to try and open up interdimensional portals. They've also put out, I'm not sure if you've seen it, but that little interpretive dance video called Symmetry that the group of guys at CERN got together and put out. I'll tell you, it's worth the 2 minutes of watching this Symmetry video because it shows very clearly, in my opinion, what they're trying to accomplish, which is the complete disillusion of, to me, the ether that holds everything together. They're trying to rip a hole in the boson-Higgs field, essentially.
Exactly. Now, let me give you a little details here. So people, and by the way, if you're a nuclear physicist and you're in Tier 2 science, I'm going to give you some Tier 1 science from the late 21st century, early 22nd century. I'm going to tell you some things now you don't know. The first thing is there's 5 dimensions in our realm, and what the scientists are doing is actually we've had science that's centuries ahead of what the public thinks we have. For example, we've had what's called torsion field imaging, which actually images a gravitonic field, so we can see into deep space gravity fields and gravity waves from deep space that travel faster than the speed of light. Light, with regular optic telescopes, including other electromagnetic radiation, is limited to the 4th dimension. Gravitonic fields are the 5th dimension, which travel faster than light, which is what we call warp speed. When you do, like Star Trek, make a warp drive, you actually create a warp in time-space or Higgs field, so that you move the Higgs field faster than light across time-space, and you create a wormhole that allows you to travel faster than light. Because if you were to hit even a photon of energy or a small particle hitting a spaceship and traveling at or approaching speed of light, it would rip through the vehicle and blow it to pieces. Because the amount of mass of that photon of energy or that particle, alpha particle, whatever, would approach infinity. Okay?
Yeah.
So the only way to travel at or even close to the speed of light is to create what's called a Higgs field, which is a warp drive that actually creates a time-space warp. So what they're trying to do is actually create, map out, and they're mapping out all the time-space tunnels across the universe that are naturally part of the structure of the universe. They call it dark matter, dark energy.
Right.
And there are time-space tunnels that actually already exist across the cosmos. So if you enter one, say on one side of the galaxy, you can be on the other side almost instantly. Okay? It's 100,000 light years. So to travel by light, it would be 100,000 years if you traveled as light. When you enter the Higgs field, you travel faster than light across time-space. Do you follow me?
I do. Yes, sir.
Right. Now, what people need to understand, gravity waves can not only create problems, but they can solve problems. If you have the right frequency of a gravity wave, you can actually shatter micronucleii. So if you have radioisotopes, and Tesla told us to Madame Curie back 100 years ago, you could literally take scalar harmonic frequencies and actually shatter nuclei and destroy them. And he told us in a letter to Madame Curie. Now, what I'm telling you here is what they've been trying to do, and that's why they have Kali there, is they have moved what's called star power. Right now, there's different, if you look at I think it's who's that nuclear physicist that has very popular on television, the physicist, the Japanese guy?
Michikaku.
Michikaku, yeah. And he talks about different levels of energy in the universe. You got level 1 energy, you have what we call heat, you can actually burn stuff. Level 2, you've got nuclear fusion, as Einstein says, creating heat and boiling water with nuclear fuel is stupid. That's a paraphrase of what he said.
Yeah.
The third phase is what's called nuclear fusion energy, which is helium-3. Now, I've been announcing this for years, and people said, Deagle's crazy, Deagle's crazy, Deagle's crazy. And all of a sudden, last year, the Chinese announced they have 3,600 scientists that are going to mine helium-3 from the moon, and they're going to take those helium-3 crystals and use tokamak fusion reactors to create fusion energy on Earth.
There you go.
Now, I can give you a specific, and not just little minor details, I can give you all of the technical specifications to make a tokamak fusion reactor. Now, last month, Lockheed Martin actually came up with a design for a 23 by 32 foot fusion reactor that could supply enough power for 80,000 homes. Okay?
Okay.
Now, how they can miniaturize them, because we have them miniaturized in our space fleet. Have you ever heard of the Aurora?
Yes. Yep. The
Aurora, okay.
Go ahead.
The Aurora have been in service for 50 years, okay? They travel at sublight speeds between here and the Mars, or colony on Mars, or interplanetary base stations, and our operation, the mining operation, and our city on the moon. The reason why they put all this disinformation though is they don't want the public to know that they bifurcated science and they're interacting with advanced civilizations from other worlds already. Okay?
Yep.
So they're hiding all this stuff from the public because what society has decided, and the globalists have decided, they'd rather let most of the human population die in global cataclysm, which is why they're trying to sequester billions of bullets and food in underground cities so they can hide from the approach of the Nemesis dwarf star, which returns roughly every 3,650 years. And the gravity waves already indicate with hyperelliptic comets that's coming in. I can't give you dates, but they know it's coming. Now, we also have, by the way, if you want to call it a council of civilizations that literally is under the Most High God and are here to intervene and protect us. But it depends, and it's dependent on our behavior. If we deserve being, in a sense, intervened, we'll be intervened and we'll be saved. If we don't deserve it, they're going to just let the cataclysm wipe out humanity. So you have to understand that we're on a knife's edge. Okay? And that God can intervene and save us. As it said, let those days be cut short, it says in the book of Mark. No flesh would survive. So in other words, an intervention's coming, but I think, unfortunately, much of the human race aren't going to listen because they're not going to repent of abortion, of eugenics, of war, of pestilence, of destroying the biosphere and every other living thing.
That's right.
We have a non-repentant civilization that basically doesn't, I call it unoneness. Oneness means you're completely empathic with other living things. You walk by a plant, the plant needs watering, you should water. You don't kick the dog, you don't destroy people, you don't drop phosphorus bombs, you don't promulgate war for profit, you don't destroy the biosphere, even though the orca whales now are not singing in the North Pacific because there's no baby whales anymore. So what's going on right now is we are supposed to be what's called the keepers of our civilization. We're supposed to be stewards. Our destiny is to be like midwives for other civilizations and other worlds. Okay? Now, what's going on right now is we're at the culmination of the end of a great galactic and cosmic war. This is not just a little war on the spiritual level like The Devil Made Me Do It, Flip Wilson, or Sammy Davis Jr. This is a real war for the human population, for genetics, and for our destiny of mankind. And the Bible shows it. The metaphysician, the genius of the incarnation of the Most High God is Yeshua, Jesus, but he said, when I return, you shall be as I am. So in other words, we are qualitatively no different than Jesus when he returns.
Wow.
That's profound.
That is.
In other words, you need to pick up our scepter and start ruling and stop acting like we're victims. We need to start apprehending the nature of the battle we're in. We need to start bringing us back to a constitutional republic and bringing republic to other nations rather than democracy. The end is missing, demonocracy. Democracy always leads to mob rule and destruction. They call it communism, totalitarianism. It's otherwise known as Satanism. Every other ism other than republic, where the individual is sovereign and made in the image of the Creator, always leads to annihilation and Satanism. Every one. Communism included.